Hi, this is Kasian, and it's time for our weekly conference call at VectorspaceAI. We'll start with what's happening around the world, and in terms of geopolitical events, saber-rattling is continuing to grow against Ukraine by Russia. The world is keeping an eye on that, as it may affect world markets. BTC is trading at 48.4, and ETH is trading in the range of 4,100, while the Dow is at 35.7. On the industry side, Visa is launching a crypto consulting unit to push for mainstream adoption, CNBC reports. Fierce Biotech reports a company by the name of Recursion has looped in Roche and Genentech for a multi-billion-dollar AI drug discovery deal. That's artificial intelligence drug discovery deal. On a related note, speaking of AI and drug discovery, DeepMind debuts a massive AI language model that beats GPT-3 on some tasks. Quantum Magazine reports AI researchers fight noise by turning to biology. And then CNBC finally is reporting that a Japanese billionaire has arrived at the International Space Station on space tourism trip ahead of SpaceX lunar journey. Next, we'll move to themes and events. And Intel is warning that a chip shortage is likely to worsen if the U.S. bans imports of a compound. Quoting, the company is trying to dissuade the U.S. International Trade Commission from halting imports of so-called chemical and mechanical planarization slurries that are sold under the name Optoplane. And of course, creating thematic baskets of stocks or cryptos related to supply chain issues or chip shortages as they affect any industry can be a wise thing to do. We've been doing that and keeping an eye on these baskets, the performance of them. On the corp side, everything is steady as she goes under HR, legal, and finance. And moving on to engineering, product, QA, and ops, we have three focuses. And the first would be thematic baskets for cryptos and developing the API. The API is developed, we're just engaged in QA and testing. And when we engage in QA and testing, it's not just for bugs or inconsistencies, it's for relevance, precision, and accuracy, which can sometimes be subjective. In any case, we'll be releasing the API this week and make a public announcement related to it, in addition to meeting with a couple of exchanges this week on the thematic baskets for cryptos API. We are also focused on three important data sources that you might consider these pillars as data sources for bioinformatics or computational biology or all of life sciences. They are gene ontology, PubMed, and Uniprot. These data sources represent or contain human language, a lot of human language. They also contain a lot of sequences. And there we're going to create targeted crawlers for each, and this would be for data cleaning afterwards and data pre-processing so that we can get to creating the input files and model building, language model building. After that, datasets are produced, correlation matrix datasets, which are then used to cluster and generate real-time visualizations, which would be our number 3 focus. If you look at a data engineering pipeline, you can cut it into two, with the first stage being the processing of the data resulting in datasets, and the second stage being the visualization and data interpretation. That's where you make the discoveries. Next, we've got partners, customers, and collaborators. We will focus on UCL in terms of what's happening with University College of London. We are working with David Barber, the head of their AI center there, and building a team of individuals, researchers and scientists that are going to advance our work in language modeling. We're going to work together, we're going to combine forces, and we're going to go over some of the original papers that we developed, white papers that we developed for the original experimental language models that we implemented at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And we are going to work toward improving vector construction and coming up with new methods for vector construction and bringing in new clustering methods and optimizing current clustering methods, in particular spectral clustering. Better clustering gets you better relationships, which in turn get you faster discoveries. We're also talking with their commercialization and licensing group, and that includes a PR strategy. Some of the research directions include looking at the differences between GPT-2 and GPT-3's performance, modeling data engineering pipelines. Today, a lot of groups are finding that most of their signal, their alpha, is occurring from how the data engineering pipelines are architected, how the data is cleaned, consumed, how it's organized, how stop words lists are produced or algorithmically generated, how ontologies or controlled vocabularies are used, verticals or categories of information, and named entity recognition. All of that combined makes for better signal or better alpha. We'll also be looking at spin glass methodology, and that would include understanding how abrupt transitions occur, modeling those within data engineering pipelines. Some of that work will be based on a paper titled Finding Spin Glass Ground States Through Deep Reinforcement Learning. We'll also be focusing on sequences of amino acids, RNA sequences, and other kinds of sequences grouped on the basis of physiochemical properties. And that is all under University College of London. Now, what we're going to be doing with UCL is going to be benefiting ICL, or Imperial College of London. So we've got a lot of ML and AI happening at UCL, and that's going to be brought in to advance our work in human aging and space biosciences with ICL, Imperial College of London, in particular with the Roos Lab there. And we are preparing some documentation for some of the directions that we can go in terms of basic research and in terms of assisting their scientists in speeding up the process of hypothesis generation and precisely how we are going to do that. Some of this will include developing an abstract. This is something that their lab proposed, developing a joint abstract and poster. We have to have that ready by January 6th, and it will be presented February 19th at the Biophysical Society. So there's going to be a big engineering push over the holidays for us so that we can meet that deadline. And the title of the poster, or this might be one of the titles, a proposed title of the poster is Towards a Real-Time Protein Relationship Network for Biosciences Researchers. We'll be working with data sources already mentioned, like UniProt gene ontology, and those will be used to create knowledge graphs. Knowledge graphs are not our business, but knowledge graphs do represent a fundamental basis for how things directly connect in a data source, such as UniProt. Knowledge graphs are valuable. You can build on them and develop probabilistic connections to other things. And you can do that with graph networks. So we'll be moving from knowledge graphs to graph. We'll be helping them move from knowledge graphs to graph networks to full-blown relationship networks, where you've got a lot more compressed data and rich data, metadata, triangulated data. And that all helps with the acceleration of hypothesis generation and discoveries. We'll also be working with the Roos Lab and Imperial College of London related to storing these graph networks in CosmoDB, and that is the database that's been developed by the collaboration between Microsoft Azure Space and SpaceX, designed to house and derive knowledge graphs from all data coming from space. That will include storage, of course, as mentioned before, of our correlation matrix datasets and the correlation matrix datasets that we developed for the Roos Lab at ICL. Next, we'll mention a little bit about NASA Space Biosciences and Gene Lab. We have outlined objectives of how we define success for NASA Space Biosciences. This is the document that's going to be given to them related to their addition to our Scientific Advisory Board. And we are going to have a focus on language modeling. And that language modeling will represent a collaboration between University College of London and Imperial College of London and the Bissell Lab at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and NASA Space Biosciences. Because at NASA Space Biosciences is Gene Lab. At Gene Lab, you'll find lots of omics data, gene expression data, different data on differentially expressed genes, data on DNA repair. However, you won't find much language modeling happening. And language modeling being the tip of the spear in AI and ML, and as it relates to breakthroughs in biology today, represents how we are going to advance or define success with NASA Space Biosciences. In short, it would be by adding language models to a lot of the data that they have right now, and then advancing those language models toward the generation of correlation matrix datasets, and then from there, graph networks and relationship networks that are able to detect and display hidden relationships between proteins and drug compounds in the context of space biosciences. We'll also be uploading correlation matrix datasets to locations within Gene Lab that have been designated for these datasets. And just to reiterate, these datasets will be designed to assist their scientists in speeding up the process of discovery. Next, we'll move to another scientific collaborator of ours, CERN. And we've been asked by them to attend a talk on the directions they'd like to go in related to graph networks and relationship networks between particles. This will relate to a talk titled Learning New Physics from a Machine. That's Wednesday, December 15th at 11 a.m. Zurich time. And quoting, here's an excerpt from a description for that talk. Model-independent search strategies like the one discussed in the talk might play a vital role in experimental programs where, like at the LHC, increasingly rich experimental data are accompanied by an increasingly blurred theoretical guidance in their interpretation. Unquote. And we are still under partners, customers, and collaborators, and that means that we will provide updates on our financial markets partners. And that would mean that when the thematic baskets QA session is done, and when we're ready to release the API, we will introduce that to all financial market partners that we have and revenue sharing distribution partners. We are also generating data sets concurrently while we work on the progress with our scientific collaborators. And that's going to mean, as mentioned in the past, being able to provide benchmarks that we develop, that we meet within our scientific collaborations, that we can showcase to our financial market partners so that they can showcase it to their institutional partners. Most of our work with our scientific collaborators will complete by the end of February, and that's when we're going to go full bore on introducing our correlation matrix datasets and relationship networks, real-time relationship networks, to the financial markets. Before then, we'll of course have retail offerings in place. Next, we'll move to corporate development, business development, sales, and marketing. And as mentioned, we'll be presenting among several different biotechs and pharmaceutical companies and biosciences researchers from all over the world, about 5,000 of them. And that will be at a conference in San Francisco. And of course, that directly connects to corporate development, business development, and sales and marketing. Next, we'll move on to IR, PR, and Marcom. Much of what we've reviewed so far connects directly to our PR pipeline. And if you're putting puzzle pieces together, you'll understand that every release that we have, every collaboration, every progress point, every data set is a PR. It's a chance for us to talk about how well we know data sets and what can be done with them to the world. Showcasing our data sets, showcasing our relationships, networks, the showcasing of them by our scientific collaborators is one of the best forms of marketing you could possibly have. And we'll touch on that in just a bit, a little more on that. Next, we'll move to exchanges, and everything is steady as she goes in terms of the exchanges. A lot of our dialogue with exchanges will be based on the Crypto Baskets API. Next, we'll move to questions from the trader base. Question 1. I'm wondering at what point we are at on the overall revenue model. And in quotes, year 1 on slide 13 of the financials overview envisioned 100 NASDAQ and NYSE customers. So, for example, Imperial College of London or University College of London or any of the scientific collaborations are not really that, but I guess it means that they are part of the increasing count toward the 100 among several of their collaborations. Something like this. Okay, well, just as explained, we have several different customer segments. It's very important not to lump in life sciences industry with the financial markets. They are two separate industries. That means they require two different kinds of data sets. So we service them in different ways. We do not address other industries in our revenue projections. We only project revenue based on the financial markets. We have not yet included other industries in our revenue projections. That is key for everyone to take note of. Because we are entering the pharmaceutical industry, we are entering the biosciences industry, the entire life sciences industry. That represents one of the largest customer bases, probably the largest customer base you can possibly have, given that trillions upon trillions have been put into the pandemic that have resulted in all kinds of resources for pharmaceutical companies, life sciences companies around the world to begin to devote to and make progress in terms of new therapies, and that includes personalized medicine. Monthly reoccurring revenue is our goal, and we are going to steer clear from professional consulting. This means we're more focused on the SaaS and DaaS models, software as a service or datasets as a service, for biotechs and pharma companies, and the financial markets, which include institutions and retail. Our work among our scientific advisors in our collaborations, our work in the life sciences, biosciences industry increases adoption in all other industries and quickens the path to revenue, or monthly recurring revenue, more importantly. Question 2, I just reviewed the website FAQ and get that VXV gives you access to datasets. The token can be used to pay for a subscription to access VectorspaceAI services, although customers can also pay for subscriptions with USD, ETH, or BTC. Beyond payments, the token wallet address serves as an API key for the distribution of the dataset. So help me out here. Let's say I am an institution like University College of London or Imperial, and I buy datasets with USD, BTC, ETH, or VXV via subscription. But even if I buy the USD, I have to buy VXV in order to have the datasets distributed to me. Just trying to figure out the essential incentive for institutions to owning VXV tokens. What's the advantage of buying VXV? The important part of this answer would be to do a search for data provenance, a search for the word provenance, and a search for the word security. Because data provenance is one of the most important things related to data today. If you don't know where your data came from, you can't rely on it. Garbage in, garbage out. Data provenance solves for that. You need that. You can't operate accurately or precisely without it. The VXV token connects directly to a hash of that dataset to make sure that that is the dataset that you ordered. It is the dataset that no one else touched. It is the dataset with your timestamps, your calculations, your specs, and your optimizations. It is secure, because if that dataset is not secure, you might wind up losing billions, or worse yet, losing a life. Proteins correlated to drug compounds. If the accuracy has been tampered with, it simply cannot happen. That's what the VXV token protects against. Question 3. Would you please provide information on what matrix you use in measuring VXV utility adoption? If so, please continue to update us with this matrix so that we know our progress. Matrix related to core, statistic, and dataset, partnership, etc. for us to understand it better. Thanks. Yes, we'll be supplying those metrics to everyone. First, we'll wait until we have something significant to report. Significant numbers are important, and we're not going to talk about something until we have something to talk about. Question 4, how do you deal with the reality of bots painting the tape so as to still maximize profits using crypto-based thematic baskets? This is a very good question. After we engage in the QA process for thematic baskets for crypto, we've already done this for the traditional markets, for traditional stocks. But after we engage in the QA process, which includes not just testing for bugs and inconsistencies, but as mentioned, relevance, precision, and accuracy, in addition to gain and profit, which is more important for financial institutions, we will then begin conducting historical backtests. Those historical backtests will tell us how well we are doing against any bots painting the tape. I can tell you that most of the bots in any market-making activity, if you see demand come in, sometimes you might want to let it ride, and that includes parameters that you set with any algorithm that drives any kind of bot network that might withdraw their bids or withdraw their asks so that they can let something ride when they see buy pressure, when they observe buy pressure. So we'll have more data points on this. We can't accurately let you know precisely what's going to happen in terms of how the painting of tape affects the performance of crypto baskets. It does not affect the performance of baskets on the traditional market side, and there's a lot of painting of the tape happening there, but it usually happens near the close and after hours or pre-market. So we'll provide the public with updates on that when we can here, when we're done with the historical backtesting. Question 5. Last week you mentioned Bloomberg, and I had never heard or noticed you mentioned them before. Can you tell us a bit more about that relationship, please? So early on, we talked with John Pancare, their strategic partnership manager on the alternative data side. This was over a year ago, and they didn't know much about natural language processing. It wasn't really on their radar. So we decided to put that dialogue on ice and wait till time had passed. They also had a rigorous process for testing whether or not products should be distributed on the Bloomberg platform. And that would have required an immense amount of time and resources on our part to push through. So we decided to go with S&P and then bring in Morningstar. We are going to reignite our talks with Bloomberg, and that would be after we publish with our scientific collaborators. Question 6. Once tokens are bought back, they go to the treasury and taken out of circulation. Then what? Are they locked, or do they sit there until the team sells them again and it's advantageous? So we follow industry standards related to U.S. publicly traded companies in terms of buybacks. So you can look at the way buybacks work on Google, and you'll have all the information you need in terms of how companies handle buybacks. There's a million different ways. For us, a buyback of VXV is smart for us because we know the value of our data sets will only increase over time. And then value directly correlates to the value of VXV and the market. The way the market values the data sets, the market will value VXV. So it only makes sense for us to acquire as much VXV as possible and utilize that VXV in the future to either lease to other groups in terms of data sets or to use high value data sets ourselves and holding on to the VXV associated to those data sets. We can at any time sell VXV to any institution, any enterprise in the world at their request. And that would, of course, be at a higher price than it would be currently valued. For more information on buybacks, again, we encourage you to do a quick search on the net. Question 7. Since every change in a dataset is saved on the Ethereum blockchain using VXV and some dataset update itself every 5 minutes, does it mean that you must pay the high gas fees on ETH network every 5 minutes? No, it doesn't. Do I understand it correctly? Nope. So that's not at all a concern. Question 8. Once these tokens are bought back, okay. That was a duplicate question that was given to us. Okay, so this means we can move straight to strategy. And let's provide a couple of updates on the investment club. So the investment club continues to grow. We've got over 1,000 people. And these would be a combination of individual investors and institutions and funds. What we are going to do is once we are done publishing with our scientific collaborators, which is in about 2 months, that's going to enable us to reach out to a couple of institutions that Morningstar is going to refer to us. And as mentioned before a couple of times, we are waiting on that process. This is all about timing for us. In the meantime, we are practicing, using, and generating thematic baskets and keeping an eye on global events. It's very important to understand how to use a thematic basket, and that starts with how to generate one. So joining the Thematic Baskets channel, feel free to ask any questions related to anything from what is a global event to how do I look at this press release and generate a basket to I see something that might be big, how do I understand, can I submit the entire text to the system to then generate a basket? Can I generate networks of baskets so I can deploy more capital? Can I filter baskets? Can I hedge them? Can I hedge them with one another? Can I have components in a basket hedged against one another? Can I hedge cryptos against stocks in the same basket? Can I do a network of those baskets? So these are all things that we need to, that everyone needs to explore. And institutions will come up with very fancy ways of filtering and optimizing baskets, of course, on their own. And that will be proprietary to them, but we'll come up with our own methods, of course. And the Thematic Baskets channel is designed to be converted to the investment club, which means that we will have the cream of the crop in terms of high-value data sets which generate high-value thematic baskets. Next, under strategy, we'll talk a bit about revenue, and we've got 2 main categories of revenue. The first category represents retail and consumers. And under retail, you've got traders, for example, individual investors. And under consumer, you've got personalized, anyone that needs personalized medicine or precision medicine. And that is everyone. Category 2, we've got institutions and enterprises. And when you look at an institution, that might be an asset management company or a fund. When you look at an enterprise, it might be a biotech or a pharmaceutical company, or a law firm or a chemical company. Those two categories best represent the customers that we will be targeting and have targeted in the past in terms of providing thematic baskets of stocks as well as relationship networks to pharmaceutical companies and the biosciences industry as a whole. We're advancing basic research related to protecting and repairing the human body, and that includes drug discovery, drug repurposing, human aging, and all the new therapies involved. And this is a result of relationship networks that connect proteins and drug compounds, or proteins to proteins, using our data sets. And of course, some relationship networks can be built for stocks and cryptos, and we've proven that. So it's very important to, when you look at our customer segments, when you look at the different industries that we are branching out and servicing, including the legal industry, the pharmaceutical and biotech industry, this is a multidisciplinary approach, which means that what we learn in the biotech industry, we can take and apply to the financial industry. Relationship networks of proteins and drug compounds, and the value that those relationship networks provide, and their ability to speed the process of hypothesis discovery or novel discovery, the same applies to the financial markets. You can look at relationship networks of public companies and global events or topics or themes. You can look at relationship networks that connect cryptos and traditional stocks. Once that's done, you can see how you can optimize those relationship networks so that discoveries can be made. And when a discovery is made in the financial markets, of course, that is a form of information arbitrage. It means that you know something before someone else, and that is how you gain your edge or your alpha or profit in the financial markets. So we are taking a multidisciplinary approach, and what we learn from our scientific collaborations are applying in the financial markets, and what we learn in the financial markets we apply to our scientific collaborators. When you lead with the science, it's the most powerful form of marketing you can have, and we mentioned that. This is the best form of marketing a company can have, in fact, a scientific case study. And that's why we're executing the way we are right now. Case studies, along with world-renowned scientific and academic institutions, pave the way for quicker paths to revenue for us. On another note, but related, and this would be space tourism. We mentioned that a Japanese billionaire arrived at the International Space Station. This was reported all over the news just yesterday. And this has brought up a couple of questions related to what we're doing in space biosciences. Some of the questions have come from people that we know, in fact, but that don't know much about space biosciences. Some of those questions relate to, well, are you guys supporting billionaires in space? Why are you guys supporting all these rich people going on space tourism trips? Well, that's not at all what we are doing, or a lot of groups. What we are doing is understanding what we can do with the data collected from these humans that are being sent to space. It's all about the data. When you look at people being sent to space, it's to collect the data. We are one of the major reasons humans are being sent to space is so that we can collect data, generate data sets so that we can better understand how to protect the body. The more humans that are sent into space, the better. So this is one way to think about it. We need to take what we learn about protecting and repairing the human body during spaceflight and pipeline them as on-ground therapies to all humankind, because the most important shareholder in the entire world to us is the human race. This concludes our call for this week. If you have any questions or comments,